Hello there, and welcome to this Blueprint Cram Fighter webinar. My name is Dave Delnegro, and hopefully joining us a little bit is one of your VCOM classmates, Lana Maniakhina. Today, we're going to talk about how to create an effective COMLEX Level 1 study schedule. Now, I know the big elephant in the room is that I am an MD, but I have worked with many DO students on level 1, level 2, and level 3. So it is not a topic and it is not an area that is foreign to me. So I'm excited to join you today. Hopefully Lana can join us sort of midway through. Things are busy in life, to talk a little bit about how to create a study plan and how things like Blueprint and Cram Fighter can help strengthen and make your life easier and, lower the stress a little bit. So with me today is always the hand of God, Faith, thank you, in the background. So introductions first, starting off, again, future Dr. Maniakhina should be hopefully joining us a little bit. My name is David. I am a senior resident in emergency medicine, hanging out in the state of Pennsylvania. I've been doing USMLE and COMLEX and MCAT tutoring now for, oh boy, we're pushing 8-9 years at this point, and been with med school tutors, now Blueprint Prep, for coming on 4+ years. So seen it, done it for the most part. And it's now turn to hopefully give you guys some good tips and tricks and knowledge on how to create a plan and how to stick to that plan and what sort of tools you'll have in your toolbox. So what we'll cover, and I'm not going to read this too much because we're going to come back to every one of these, is when should you take it? How long should you study it? And this slide right here, to sort of let it wash over you, is really just the most common things, the FAQ, so to say, of how when you're building a study plan, because building your study plan is one of the most important things you can do, and it's also one of the more dangerous things you could do. Not dangerous as oh no, but like I meet a lot of students and they're like 2/3 the way, 3/4 the way through their study plan, and they've made some sort of fundamental error, and it's too late for them to really to adjust from it. So you sort of have to go ahead where they're at. So to those who aren't here today, thank you for coming, because again, this is definitely a chance to see what potholes are hit most often by many students, and how to build your study schedule, how to readjust your study schedule, and how to not let the step cave or the level cave sort of take you over. And at the end, we will have a live question and answer session. So if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to drop them into the, into the chat. And there's going to be a raffle for free stuff. So everybody loves free stuff. So when should you take level 1? It's the big questions. It depends. It always depends. And in medicine, you'll learn that's always the right answer. So depending on where you are in your study plan, where you are in terms of like how your current, preclinical studying is going to tell you when. So I'm going to sort of try and make life easy by telling you what a general spectrum may look like. So the average student takes about 6 to 8 weeks to study for step 1, level 1. That gives them a chance to go through content review, to take practice tests, to do the question bank or question banks of their choice, and gives them enough time to readjust when they find out new information. Turns out I wasn't good at this, or turns out I needed less time at that. So that's probably the average student who's somewhere in the middle quartiles of their preclinical academia. There is, on the other half of the bell curve, those people who don't need a large amount of time. And it depends. What are you trying to go into? I remember when I was a second year, we had one of our smartest students. He was going to family med, and he was beloved at the program where we're at. So he had a job already. P equals the MD to him, or for you guys, 7O equals DO. And he took step 1 before the end of second year. He did 3 weeks during the year and was done. So, and on the other side, you have those who need longer. We're talking more 10, 12 plus weeks, because they need to readjust their fund of knowledge and to do more long-term content review, more long-term content learning. So it's important to sort of take a look at yourself and say, where do I think I fall on that spectrum? And most sort of fall in the middle of that 6 to 10 week plan. So it's a good place to start. And it also depends a little bit on your school too. Does your school heavily recommend doing it at a certain time? Do they require doing it at a certain time? For example, my school did not allow you to move on to third year until you had passed step 1 at that time. Have you taken a practice test before you're writing your schedule? So again, I'm just using myself as an example for a lot of these. We had a CBSE probably right around this time in second year. It wasn't designed to be the end-all be-all score. Your number didn't mean anything, but it sort of gave you a foundation of where you're at. And if you were in the, if you were like balancing near the pass-fail line, that was a good sign that you were going to be able to go forward and do a more traditional study plan. For those who are a little bit lower, it was a nice opportunity for the administration to say, here's someone who could benefit from extra help. Here's someone who, if we catch it early, we can help them smooth their way to a good study plan. And then ask yourself, looking at this bottom here, are you a good test taker, or is test taking just something that has to be done? And most people who are good test takers know they're good test takers, and vice versa. What about pass-fail? So pass-fail has certainly changed the game in recent months at this point. So because of that, a large percentage of DO students are not going to necessarily take step 1 anymore. If you are going to, then we will talk about it, but largely we're going to talk about level 1 today. Now, it's a question is, should I, if you guys and gals are sort of in this like in between area where should I take step 1 now and get a number? Should I take level 1 now and get a number? And it's that I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer for most situations. The general best practices that I have seen is that if your number is going to pop, the number may be helpful. If you are taking CBSEs or CBSSAs or the DO equivalent and you're getting 250s or you're getting 700 plus, those numbers may pop on your resume. And to those, I say, consider taking it prior to pass-fail. To those who are more straggling the pass-fail line or sort of sitting on the left-hand side of the bell curve, your 30, 40, 50th percentiles, numbers that are not by any means bad, but it may behoove you more to do the pass-fail option and spend more and displace more of that time into getting ready for CK and CE, so that your one and only number pops nicely. So again, the answer is, as always, depends, but I'm giving you two more extreme examples to sort of say why you would pick one option over the other. So lots of words here. We're going to go through this. So this is your first assessment score. So we're sort of working backwards ever so slightly here. So everybody should be taking several practice tests, and your goals and aims for these practice tests change as you move from practice test number 1 to practice test number 8, whatever number you may have in your plan. Your first test is not supposed to be a number that matters. Again, as I mentioned several slides ago, you may put yourself in sort of a category as in expected, above expected, perhaps need more attention. but plenty of people who have first practice scores in the 20th, 30th percentile or less end up doing just fine. It is going to be a measure of how long you think your eventual plan may need to be. So for the average student sitting on top of the bell curve, typically the first assessment is a bit on the left of the pass-fail line, I have seen. So for example, in using just the STEP numbers, STEP tends to be a pass at about 192. The average student in my class was in the mid 180s, meaning they were well on their way to passing, and they just actually needed to write and do a plan. So that's what you want. So don't, if you take your first practice test and the number is not what you like, remember that it's not supposed to be. You're not actually being graded on it. The number doesn't mean anything. And that they're, all it's telling you is where you are at a moment in time and giving you information to help create a stronger study plan in the future that may fit whatever you need. I see a couple new friends coming. Hello. So for those new friends, we're talking about writing a schedule and what our first practice test means. We just answered the pass-fail question, talking about how if your number is very high, may be a strengthener on your CV. And if your number is average to below average, you may be better off displacing all that extra study time on step 2 or level 2. So we sort of talked about this a little bit. How long should I study? Don't cram is in capital letters for a reason, because the step and level exams do not reward, nay, they punish crammers. On the flip side, they reward those who work hard. It is a different exam than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Back in the old days, they had if you've ever seen some of the earlier NBMEs or CBSEs, you basically had to eat first aid, regurgitate it on the exam, and then get your score. The test these days is built with a lot less buzzwords and a lot more second and third order style thinking. So your brain needs time in order to, be able to do stuff like this. Now your studies, as this sort of little mini chart below says, will evolve over time. For the average 6 to 10 week plan, you will have more content review early, and it'll give way to more practice questions. One of the things I see done usually most inefficiently is a reluctance or a holding on to practice questions and practice tests. The thought, it's almost like an ego defense to a certain degree. None of us wants to be bad at something, and if you break open COMLEX or Conquest or UWorld or goodness, Amboss, the big hammer, you're going to be bad at it in the beginning. And a lot of students will try and push off that negative feeling because there's a lot of stress to begin with. And there's value in doing questions early, even if you're not great at them early, because eventually it'll give way to building these skills and having a strong effort in the middle. So if one of the beginning, I wanted to mention that I want point out things that are potholes. Saving practice questions and practice tests for too long is a pothole that I see pretty frequently. And then students have 4 weeks left and they've done no practice tests, and they think they're going to do 9 practice tests in 3 weeks. So do your practice questions early, ramp up, do your practice tests early. Know that, like the previous slide said, the number is not necessarily indicative of where you're going to be early on. And then make it evolve over time to sort of fit more questions. Now, there's a nice little thing at the bottom there. For Cram Fighter users, we're going to talk a little bit more about Cram Fighter. in a little bit. 98 days is the average level 1 study time, coming out to about, oh goodness, I don't want to do math, about 12-ish weeks. So that, if I do math right, someone do math in the background. And that sort of fits the higher end of that 6 to 10, ever so slightly higher range that I said in the beginning. So now we're sort of moving from a little more abstract concepts to more discrete, tangible stuff. Less is more is the friend here. And we're going to have a very nice slide in a little bit that talks about the percentage of students who were sampled, who used a particular resource to study for level 1. You should not be using 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 resources on a daily basis. The nice thing about some of these major resources is that they do a lot. So, for example, you need no more than 1 or 2 question banks. So find a high quality question bank and use it. So, and then don't compare yourself to your classmate or who's sitting next to you, because everyone's sort of pathway to their ideal level 1, step 1 score is a little bit different. So everyone starts off with a little different fund of knowledge, skill sets, and set of resources. So yeah, another mistake I see students make is they take a look at their colleague who's using something, and they automatically, and so I mean, it's you know, there's almost too many good resources for step 1, level 1 at this point. And you just have to pick a couple of them and sort of write your plan and then rinse and repeat once you find a sort of steady state that works for you. So, and then like I said, start early, don't cram. When you start early, you have time for life. Life is going to continue to exist in bad things and bad luck and all sorts of things like flat tires, ill family members, stuff like that. If you have children, life is going to continue to happen. So the earlier you start, the more leeway you have in your schedule should, you know, something occur in the middle of it. So most popular primary resources. Here where we talk about our big guns. First aid, COMBank, UWorld. Now, I was raised on the altar of UWorld, and it is still the best teaching and practice question system out there. Obviously, the large caveat that it does not do OMM, but for many students, even if they're DO students, they will combine either COMBank or ComQuest with UWorld because it is the unchallenged gold standard for not only doing questions, but for being taught the material. It is more than a practice question bank. It is a full-scale learning system. Now, first aid, how first aid gets used, we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about resource layering, may change depending on how your learning style is. So, wanted to take a chance real quick. Is there any questions so far? In a moment, I'm going to grab a quick drink of water. All right. Seeing none, we will move forward. How to use UWorld effectively. It's in big, bold letters because it needs to be in big, bold letters. What's it called? Again, it is a learning tool, not just an assessment tool. You can consider repeating your incorrect questions. One of the most common questions I get after finishing the first pass of UWorld is, Dave, do I move on to a new question bank or do I do incorrects? And if you've heard me rant long enough now, you know the answer is it depends. And if you know what me long enough, this depends is going to be followed by 2 examples of pretty standard cases. If you are doing, you know, well or particularly well in your first pass, you know, and well, particularly well means you're getting like 66th percentile or above, it may behoove you to look at a second or third question bank. if you have done, so for example, if you're starting off with UWorld, maybe now you do COMBank or ComQuest and get the DO flavor with it. If this UWorld is your second question bank and you are effectively a sadist, you might switch over to Ambox. But on the other hand, those who may struggle a little bit more and are sort of on the top or the left side of the bell curve for their first pass percentiles may benefit from going through their incorrects, because it might reveal some patterns that may help you fill in your gaps. What's it called? And that's sort of, again, this is where we can be helpful. Just to step back and do a quick plug for the work that we do, is when I say the word depends, is really where a lot of our, myself and a lot of our colleagues at Blueprint and Cram Fighter sort of really, this is our job, to take a look at your individual situation and say you fit more on this side of this pathway than the other. So sliding back onto our slide here, do not write a level 1 or step 1 textbook. Here's another most common mistake. What's it called? Don't take too many notes. I like to tell people your notes for the day should be 1 page front and back. That's it. If you are writing more than you are doing too much, you are getting too, it's either it's a red flag that your content review needs to be stronger, or that you're digging too deep into the weeds. And it's hard for med students who previously wanted to know everything, and previously wanted to swallow all the water out of the fire hose, to say this is what's important and I can discard the rest. So that's a classic tool to see if you are picking up the details you need to and where you need to be. Can you do all your notes for a day in 1 page front and back? And for those notes that become difficult, your next step is to make them into a flashcard, and the same thing. 1 main takeaway per question. So back when I was a first year, we used to have an Anki card ring, as we called it. 7 people who would split up our lectures and turn them into Anki cards and send them to the group. And one, bless her soul, used to put 3 paragraphs for 1 card. And I was like, oh man, we're gonna fix this, because it was a brick of text with 1 closed deletion. So make sure you're writing good cards, and that's a skill in itself, learning how to write good cards. And then yeah, you can use your UWorld journal on with paper and pen, with OneNote, with Excel. I'm a big fan of writing it down, because studies show that when you write it down, you actually get more out of the experience than if you type it, because when you write down, you actually process the material in a way that you don't do when you type, because when you type, you're for all intents and purposes a stenographer. You're copying and pasting. So writing is actually what causes increased learning. But I'm a neurocognitive science nerd. So most popular secondary resources. So you've got your UWorld, you've got your first aid. Now we need to add little details. The OMT review is a must-have for DO, obviously, and for level 1, level 2, level 3. Now, Pathoma is known as a must-have. Again, it's coming up as a slide, which I'm just going to talk very briefly here, of the most common things to have. And depending how long your study plan is, I'm going to tell you how much you should play with each individual one of these. If you are doing a 6-ish week study plan, then what you want to do is you want to pick, a couple resources. If you are having a 12 or 15 week study plan, or you're doing the expanded scenic route, then you can pick different resources for different things. So, and then the whole point is that secondary resources are there when you struggle with your primary resources. So, for example, you get a UWorld question wrong in cardiomyopathy, and first aid doesn't cut it. Where are you going to go next? you're going to open Pathoma. So, and I like to call this the resource ladder. So for example, my resource ladder, my primary resource is UWorld. If I get the question wrong, I read the UWorld answer explanation. 85-ish% of questions are solved through the wonders of UWorld. So for those other 15, I have my secondary resource. Now, I was never a big fan of first aid, which I know is heresy. So I would use medbullets.com, which is analogous to first aid in many different ways. So when I got a question wrong and the UWorld answer explanation was not enough, my secondary resource was medbullets. And then if that didn't work, for pathology, it was Pathoma. For farm, it was Sketchy Farm. And all these other different things. So the point is to write your resource ladder in a way that as the question becomes more difficult, as you move up the resource ladder, you're moving from more targeted review to more general review. Because if you have to move up this ladder, it's an indication that you need to review the topic as whole in a way that UWorld might not need enough. You might need all of Pathoma, or all of those couple paragraphs of Pathoma. And then I like to tell people, by the time you're reaching your quaternary resource, that's when you reach out to whoever may be tutoring you, or to an advisor or professor or something like that. And here it is. So layering resources. So here's a tried and true way for someone who's doing probably about a 8-ish or 10-week study plan, is to start with the first aid for that topic. And I usually tell my students, and if you've met one tutor, you've met mostly one tutor, so there's different ways to do it. Let's say you're starting in cardio, UWorld on Monday, to read cardio first aid Sunday afternoon to evening, between the football games, so that you're priming. The whole point is to prime. You're not going to understand everything. You're not going to use everything from it, but it's to remind you of what you may need to review on, so that when you do UWorld, ComBank, ComQuest, and you go up your resource ladder, then you are identifying your weak spots. And then in the evenings, when you're done doing questions, then that's where you fill in those weak spots. And the whole point is it becomes a cycle. You do the first aid for that particular topic, do the UWorld or ComBank for that particular topic. As you review, you go up your resource ladder, you identify your gaps, fill in your gaps, rinse and repeat with every system until, wow, you're ready to take step 1 or level 1. So hope that makes sense. I'll come back to that in a couple minutes. So what is your study style? There are many different study styles out there. There's auditory, there's visual, there's people who draw, there's people who say out loud. For example, my then fellow students and I, we had a big screen TV, and we would port Kaplan questions onto the big screen TV. And the 4 of us, we would sit there and we would enjoy a beer and like tacos or something. We'd make an evening out of it, and we would the question would come up, and we were not allowed to say our answer. We would hit the table when we knew our answer, and then once everyone had hit the table, and so it didn't spoil the rest of us, then we would go through the question and teach each other material. Group studying is your friend. But there's many different ways to do it. So try different things, see what works for you, and see what percentage works for you. Because even when we would do the Jeopardy style I guess it's reverse Jeopardy style questions on the gigantic TV, we still would need times to ourselves to review some of these things. And sort of, where do you get stuck? So, man, I was doing a webinar recent-ish, and someone told me once that in order to not look at their cell phone, they let it die in the morning, which, wow, I mean, and they like hide it, they hid their chargers. I mean, that's one way to get it done. It's a scorched earth approach, but if you get stuck on your cell phone, find a way to get rid of it. So give it to your significant other or to your family member or colleague, and you're not allowed to get it back until you finish X, Y, and Z. So, and this is where accountability buddies can come in too. So, and then this is a great picture on the right, one that I've sort of been building up for a little while now. And it's the percentage of, they've sampled a bunch of DO students who had taken level 1. And this is the resources they tend to use. And you can tell there's a big clustering here. And it's actually interesting because it's slightly different than the MD version of this chart. And I know most of you are going to just take level 1. So, and I'm only going to mention the difference because I think it reveals something interesting as I thought about. What doesn't change is the love of pathoma, is the love of board and beyond, is the love of sketching, and to a certain degree, the love of Anki. What does change, and what is the striking difference between this and the MD version of this, is the split in the question banks. So if I remember correctly, UWorld was #1 in MD. Obviously, it is a open question moving to pass-fail. What question bank or banks is probably the best? I tell my DO students, I recommend they do one of COMLEX or COMBank, and they do UWorld because of the efficacy of UWorld in being the best teaching system out there. But as you notice, there's a split. Even though UWorld is higher than COMBank and COMQuest, it's not as clean as the MD version of this chart, where UWorld is like 70+%. But it does break it nicely into tiers. And it does remind you that these are the best and most efficient resources out there. So you look at something like RX, that's not a bad resource out there, or something like Sketchy Path, and just, for most people, they find that it doesn't fit into their standard resource ladder or plan. But for someone who's taking more of a longer review plan, it may make sense. So this is when I be quiet, because I know y'all are tired of hearing about me. And I'm going to hand the mic over to Lana, who's going to show you how to build your study schedule in Cram Fighter. So Lana, take it away.
I don't know. Can you...
Good, you got the mute off.
Okay, 1 second. So let me just share my
screen. Please. Here's your chance to drink a bit of water.
All right.
I'm going to come at this full screen right here. And there we go.
Perfect. Can everyone see this? So just to give you a little background about how my medical school's curriculum is set up, we have 2 exams every week. So it's very, very difficult to fit in board studying during the blocks. So we have like 8 blocks for each system. And right now we're learning endocrine and reproductive. And so generally what I have is a basic set using Cram study. Like I'm going through my sketchy over and over again with Anki supplementation. And I am also doing like, if you count all my questions, about 80 questions a week from TrueLearn and from UWorld, just kind of alternating them because I'm planning to take both. I'm a DO student. And so what I wanted to show you today is how I'm going to set up a study block for my block break. So I'm going to have a nice long 3 weeks off in the winter. So I'm going to edit my schedule, and I'm going to 1 second, create a study block where, so for me, I'd like to review Neuro. It's a challenging system for many students, and my break is, 1 second, let me go back to, it's from like December, and I had it written down, but so it's December 23rd up to January 17th. So that's my winter break, and that's when I'm planning to review the Neuro system. For that, I have this next page here shows you special days, meaning that I can take off a few days, or if there's like Christmas that I'd want to add a day off, I don't want to be studying on Christmas, I would just go to, where is it, January 25th, for example, and yeah, free study day. And then it's nice to have like a little buffer days for whenever you just whenever you get behind, because it's bound to happen. It's inevitable, and it's all right. We're all in this together. So let's do every second, like Saturday. Saturday's a good Saturday is when I'll have off. It's only 3 weeks long, so like one Saturday I'll have off or something like that. And then this page shows the resources that I have, that all the resources, and then I'll pick the ones that I have to go with my schedule. So I have Amboss, and I would say, okay, I would like to do in a 3-week span, just Amboss on its own. I'll do like 45 questions total. But let's just do it this way, because that'd be easier. So say on Mondays, I'll do 15, and that's 3 weeks, or should be like 45. And then I also use UWorld. So I'm just getting all the questions out now. Again, I kind of like this setup more. Say on Tuesday, I'll do like 10 UWorld questions, and then Thursday another 10. And Saturday, kind of alternating them with COMLEX style questions, because they are different. Here they are. Let's do 10. And then, of course, for my main review, I personally use Boards and Beyond. One second, where'd they go? Beyond, perfect, lectures. So again, here it shows you all the videos that they have available. I'm gonna go down to Neuro, which is N. Neurology, all right. So I'm gonna watch all of the neurology during that time. And what's nice about this software program, that it kind of disperses the videos for me, so I don't have to worry about which days I'm gonna watch them, so that I can still meet my goal. There's a lot of videos. All right. Oh goodness, I'm just dragging. You can like click and drag to make it go faster. All right, there we go. That's all neurology. And we click select. Additionally, I also use Pathoma. Even though there's a lot of overlap with the Boards and Beyond questions. I'm sorry, like lecture videos. Well, there it is. But I think I like repetition. 1 second, where are we at? So these are broken up by chapters, and so 1 second. Let's see. Hypertension, nope. That's pulmonary, GI. No. Okay, it's on the side here. It says which system we're looking at. There we go, nervous system. There we go. Perfect. And then just Anki. Not everyone, but a lot of people that do use Anki use the Anki deck, and generally for each subdeck of the system, it's about 15 to 1600 cards. So unfortunately, Cram Fighter doesn't really like correspond to Anki very well. It just tells you how many cards you need to do to finish your goal, which is good enough for me, because I'm not a stickler with Anki, but I do my best. So like I said, I'll say that there's about 1600 in the subdeck for neurology, and I would add that. So that's a lot of stuff, and it looks overwhelming, and I could not imagine doing this without someone else sorting it out for me. Just can you imagine trying to write all of this out on a piece of paper and then just or count the videos manually and kind of try to make it fit. So again, my boards and beyond is like the primary system review. And then you can have you can either sort by subject and then by resource, or you can sort in chronological order. Since I'm focusing on just one system, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, too much. You could just do subject, and then they'll be both intertwined, but dapat mine boards and beyond. Okay. Next, so this is where I kind of decide how many hours a day I'm willing to spend on the lecture, question banks, or flashcards. Okay, so like I said, it's nice to have some days off, but that we determined that before. So right now that looks all right to me. I don't think I need 3 hours to complete the amount of questions that I've set myself to do. 1 hour and 1. I like to sometimes push myself and do 2 hours every other day of flashcards. Save. And it tells you how much you do compared to the other students' average. So I'm a little bit above average for the lecture hours, but it's okay. Sometimes I just like to see what it looks like, and then I will go back and I can readjust my schedule. So I can recalculate the schedule and see what it looks like. This is kind of where I play with it a little bit. So remember, this is my winter break, so I have to go look at month. Actually, that would be a lot faster, and go to, I said December. So here it is, finished product starting December 23rd, my day off of lectures. I have just some videos, and I guess I have 20 questions for UWorld, because I have a pre-made block before this, and they're both overlapping, but that's okay. I'll take extra questions. Those are good, as you can tell. So here you can see that it has redistributed the videos for me, so I don't have to do it. And what I like about this feature is that I can check mark off everything that I complete, and then I can kind of, do a little extra if I feel like it. Or just go, finish it, feel good about it, and go on with my day, and allow myself to enjoy life a little bit. One thing that I forgot to mention is, because my curriculum is so kind of rigorous, and we have 2 exams per week, which is a lot. I can just like literally, I don't know, hundreds of pages. Imagine hundreds of pages of books and just like all in one exam. So it's like a lot, and you have to stagger a lot. So I study like the materials for the system that I'm in as I'm going through the system. So I'm learning endocrine now, and so I kind of manually pick out the videos right now so that they correspond to my lectures. But that's how I study the block as I'm in the block. But then during my break, that's when I add a review of something I've already been through, such as this. And like I said, you can always adjust if you think you could do more than this, because this seems like a little bit definitely doable on your break. And if you feel like you can do more, you can always go back and edit, and just edit your schedule, and you can increase the hours where you want. I kind of name my study blocks as just question banks, it's endocrine, neurology. You'll just click on, let's see, I think right here. Yeah, perfect. And you can readjust your hours. You can add more resources to it, and just kind of tailor it to how you feel, without having to go through the whole process again. You can just add more things. Yeah. But that is all. Does anyone have questions? Stop sharing.
Now I'm muted. Well, thank you for that. That's really helpful. Man, back when I was in yellow shirts, I didn't have all these fancy things. So Cram Fighter did exist. It was not as fancy as it now. Didn't have boards and beyonds. Oh, we had first aid and we had to walk up the snow. Hold please, I gotta get my screen action.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I do use first aid more like a reference, a supplement, but I don't like add it to my schedule. I just kind of refer to it, kind of like a Bible, kind of go back to when you need to, but I don't religiously read passages from it. Yeah.
All right. So, and sort of like bouncing off, where Lana was, and thank you for that. That was very helpful. Like again, it's very powerful to have a good schedule written and to be able to fractionate it down the way that Cram Fighter does, and to be able to rebalance it when life comes calling. It's also important, as sort of Lana mentioned near the end there, that you're writing yourself a reasonable plan. I recommend to students that they write a plan that fits about a 70% efficacy each day. And one of the biggest problems, probably the biggest problem I see students make, is they write these study plans that assume they're going to be 100% efficient every day. And you may be able to hold on to that for a day or two, but eventually the stress and the sleepiness starts to bear in, and heaven forbid you get like a cold or something like that. So write yourself some slack, write yourself a plan that is comfortable but challenging, meaning as in, and that sounds like a oxymoron, but like you should be able to get to the end of the day and say, okay, that made me push myself, but I did not feel out of control. And then the next day, in the next week or something, push yourself a little bit further until you find you're at a steady state where you're doing the number of questions you need to, the number of flashcards you need to, but you're not setting yourself up for burnout. You're not setting yourself up for failure, so to say. And again, one of the most common things is you overestimate your capacity to study because you are writing a 12-ish week study plan thinking that all 96 of those days is going to be great. And they're not all going to be great. Some are going to be okay, some are going to be poo. It's just the way of the world. So build yourself in flexibility, make sure you're doing quality over quantity. And again, I concur with Lana. I never really read first aid like it was a long thing to do. It was a good resource. It is a good secondary resource I found. And it was good to flip through it before I did questions and say to myself, forgot that. Ooh, need to review that. Don't think I'm good at that. And that's another common mistake, is to treat first aid as if like multiple passes of it by themselves are going to give you a score increase. So little tips and tricks as we start to move towards the end a little bit. Don't agonize over it, just like we said. Pick a couple good resources, pick a question bank or two. You won't remember everything. You won't learn everything. So don't fret if you don't remember the parasitic life cycles of things that aren't malaria, because I don't know what they are anyway. And all that down. Remember that eventually what is going to be necessary is things that are clinical, especially if you are going to do the pass-fail option. If you're going to do the pass-fail option, your 210 or your 260 or 500 and 700 is equivalent. P's get degrees. So you're going to want to change. Oh, hold on, we've got a cat here. You're going to want to change. This is Kit. Say hi, Kit. You're going to want to change the amount of time you spend doing small detail studying if you're doing the pass-fail option. Because do you really care a whole lot about the nitty-gritty of genetics and biochem if you're gonna be like me and do emergency medicine, where let me tell you how much I use any of that anymore? Very little. So it will, but if you are going for the number, give it the time it needs to as determined by the expected yield of that material. Your schedule will and must change. You're going to find you are better at some things than expected and vice versa. You will find that you were just bad at things. Mine was gyne cancer. Yikes. Still to this day, can't help you there with gyne cancer. But hem-onc, for some reason, just fit like a glove. So I barely needed any time for hem-onc. To this day, hem-onc makes all sorts of sense. So you'll find things come naturally, things do not come naturally. So you will have to adjust and fit, where you are. If you don't get something, mark it and move on. When you mark it and you come back to it, again, review its yield. Like as this bottom bullet says, don't spend all the time on leishmaniasis. Spend all the time on heart failure, because you're going to get 5, 6, 7+ questions on heart failure and 0 to 1 on leishmaniasis, 2 if they're cruel. So these are just your general best practices here. So, and we're going to use the last couple minutes for doing the Q&A. I see a couple Q&A questions in there, so I see them, I promise. You will fall behind at some point. It's just almost impossible not to. There's going to be a concert you want to go to. There's going to be family and holiday things to do. And you won't be able to do your standard workload if there's a birthday party going on or some sort of bar crawl or whatever. You guys still have lives and events and stuff to do. So the challenge is coming up with a balance of that too. I spend some time with my students in the very beginning, and what's it called? Lana, prepare yourself, because I'm going to ask you how you stay balanced in about 2 minutes. Don't want to put you entirely on the spot. And sort of targeted goals. You should spend about 30 minutes every day, averaged over 7 days, doing something exercise related, doing something fun, doing something with friends and family. You can double or triple dip that. For the people who, bless their souls, I think they're crazy, enjoy running, for example, they get the triple dip. They run with friends and they enjoy it. So me, an intellectual, I like to walk. But I get the same benefits. Walk with friends, walk with your significant other, so your colleagues and all that good stuff. Call your mom, call your dad, all sorts of things. Go to a concert, go out with friends one evening. So, but you have to weigh that against the fact that you have to make sure you build into that, otherwise you will naturally fall behind. So, and again, if you're studying with Cram Fighter, use the rebalancing tool. If you know there's a music festival you're going to this week that you forgot existed, that you bought tickets for 6 months ago. So go to the music festival, do your Anki on the way there, and enjoy it, but rebalance yourself and make sure you're still hitting your goals while hitting your mental health and wellness goals. And the very end of this is sort of how to manage anxiety, test anxiety, burnout, depression. What I do like to tell students is you write your anxiety, burnout, depression plan while life isn't so bad. So the old saying, if you plan to go around the quagmire instead of through the quagmire, you'll be more successful. There's a tail here. So write a plan. If I feel like I'm bending or my mental health is bending, who are my resources? What do I do? What falls first? So for example, if things aren't going well in residency, my eating habits are the first to go. Yay. So, and I'm aware of that. So I know when I've eaten like bad for the 2 or 3 days, okay, that's a sign that I'm burning through the mental wellness capital that I've built up in my little bank here. And I know it's a time to turn it around. Maybe I cancel a commitment that's not important, for example. Learn to say no, it's helpful. And then what happens if you feel that your mental health is starting to break? Who are you going to call? Who are those people who will answer your phone call at midnight or whatnot? Your parents, if you have a therapist, if you need, sort of advanced or like more formal, make sure you get that. And as one of my friends in med school used to say, everyone with a pulse could benefit from therapy. So it is very true. So if you need to pull the ripcord, build the ripcord into your plan so it doesn't wreck your planning, increase your anxiety, but be self-aware of what happens when you get stressed, what happens when you feel burnout, and what happens when you feel depression coming on. The more you plan for it now, the happier you will be when you notice it several days in and you change course so that you've now lessened the effect of that episode. Lana, what do you do to rebalance?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm the worst person to ask about this because I thrive under pressure and I load myself up with projects. I find joy in them. So well, exercise. I play volleyball, so I would play in tournaments on the weekends. That's very nice and stress relieving to me. And but anyways, I take pride in my projects. I just received the grant that I wrote, and then like I'm working on developing an app right now. So just I had to meet with people. But I love learning, and I think sometimes whenever you feel tired, this is kind of what I did in undergrad. You just have to trick your mind believing that this is the best thing you've ever looked at. Like this is the best stuff here, and you just have to like trick your mind believing that you love this. No, that was undergrad. Biology. Medicine, I actually do love, and just if you're passionate about your future and you want to do it for the right motivations, I guess, for right goals, and that will push you forward.
That's well said, and that's I like that too because it's not what I do, and it is a good reminder that there are many different ways to pet this cat in front of me. Because let me tell you what I can't do. I can't reframe what's it called, cancers as exciting or fun or passionate, because my brain just doesn't work that way. So what I do is I tell myself I have to know this for now. I need to be good at it for now, and then I can forget it exists in 2 years. I can know that ovarian cancer exists and how to refer people when I'm on my own, but I don't need to know follicular cell pathology. So whatever you need to do, but that's a good point. You need to bargain with yourself depending on what sort of motivates you, how to get there. What is my goal? How do I get there? How can I make what I think stinks stink a little bit less and reframe that energy on what I enjoy a little bit more. So, we're doing things. So, just coming around because we're nearing the end now. Use multiple question banks. Again, I recommend one DO bank. Oh, kitty! Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, I have to get an animal if you can. Just a 2-minute break and just hold them and everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah. And literally, you play with cats and life is good again. So 10 cc's of meow, please. So I recommend to most DO students to have one of the 2 DO banks and then combine it with UWorld. What's it called? The nice thing about seeing questions written different ways is that there's only so many ways to test something, and if you see 2 or 3 people write it in a certain way, your ability to pick it up when the 4th writer writes a little bit differently is increased. For the same reason, split your MBSEs, there we are, and COMSAs together and sort of get the best of both worlds. And get a meditation app. Get your headspace, your insight timer, your calm, sort of stuff like that. And again, know who you are. If anyone's been listening to this, know I moved it like I fit ER really well because I don't stop going. So calm and headspace don't work for me. But what it does is turning on Monday Night Football and just laying on the couch with my cats. There's my headspace. The Giants won a game. That's unusual. So yeah, find what works for you. Go to the gym, go out, see the sun, all that sort of good stuff. And this is a relatively newer slide to our webinars, but it's one of my favorite newer slides. Control what you can control and try to let the rest roll off of you. So, and this is a powerful slide because you write down the things that make you anxious, stressed, burned out, And what can't you control? I can't control how many questions are on cardio. Hold on. Got a piece of fur right in the mouth. I can't control the breakdown of the different, if my test is going to be heavy cardio or heavy gyne or heavy whatever it may be. There's ranges, but those ranges are suggestions that change sometimes. But what I can control is the amount of time and effort I put into them. I cannot control if a meteor hits the testing center. So, but I can tour the testing center first and learn that there's a cafeteria in the basement and I don't have to bring hot food, and I can just fire a $10 bill at the nice lady behind the counter is going to give me raviolis. It's a true story. So know what you can control, know what you cannot control, and try and minimize and don't catastrophize what you cannot control. And that's super helpful because it allows you to focus your energy on stuff that is ultimately fruitless to stuff that may make a small but measurable difference. So wrapping up, oh, hello there. So wrapping on up, Q&A time. If you've got Q's, I've got A's, I suppose. Lana, yourself, if you have any questions too. So we have one question here from Mary M. How do you read and annotate first aid effectively? Do you suggest using it before doing questions and select questions based on this content, or after doing questions plus primary resources to learn from mistake and reaffirm the disease etiologies discussed in the answered choices? Well written question. So I personally, and I was sort of a heretic, I didn't use a lot of first aid. So I'm going to tell you what I did. I'm going to tell you what the average student does. The average student reads it, or at least skims it before they go and do their questions. And then they use it as needed when they review their questions to go through as detailed. I pretty much only did the latter of those two. What I would do is, like the resource ladder I talked about, I would use it if I did not understand what UWorld was telling, or AMBOSS wasn't a thing back then, really Kaplan. If I didn't understand what Kaplan or UWorld was telling me, my next step was to check with first aid and see if there was anything particularly helpful there. So I used it as a secondary resource, and I would flip through every once in a while just to see like, okay. And the other thing that I think it's really powerful for, and one of the few places I used it more heavily, is lower yield systems. It's good for lower yield systems like biochem, genetics, ethics, stuff like that, that are real questions or real points, but because they're less detail heavy and more memorization heavy, they fit nicely into straight review by first aid. Now, I didn't annotate, I didn't take notes on the side, but I know some that do and some that get a lot of power out of it. If it works for you, it works for you. I don't recommend it for the average default student because it's really hard to review those notes. You may never see those notes again if you don't come back to that page. Whereas if you have your one sheet front and back, those notes these are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, you have a book that sort of comes together. Lana, how do you use first aid? I know you mentioned something earlier interesting about the way you use it. Are you a heretic too?
Yes.
There it is.
Well, Anki, like the Anki, if you do the cards, it has like the attachments and it'll have a picture of first aid. Or if you do a question on UWorld or TrueLearn, I think both of them provide pages of first aid. Maybe not UWorld, I can't remember, but definitely TrueLearn, and actually Boards and Beyond. I use their question banks too after the videos. Because I'm more of a question person than Anki, but the questions can actually have the pages of each year of the first aid book, and you can refer to them if you want to like a further review.
And there you go. I mean, there's so many ways to sort of put it together. I like that. Is there any other, and I'm going to give 15 or so seconds, any other questions? I thank y'all for coming. Lana, do you have any questions yourself?
No, I think it's an amazing job. Thank you.
Awesome. So seeing no further questions sort of popping up, it has been a pleasure. I know that I vomited like a gazillion years of or hours of information at you at once. So if you have any questions, you know where to sort of find us. Use this code, I can't pronounce that as a word, to get 20% off Cram Fighter, which is 5% more than the current Halloween sale. And lastly, I mean, if you have questions or you think that we could be of some help to you as med school tutors, now Blueprint, gotta get used to that. Feel free to reach out. You know, we do everything from straight one-on-one tutoring to content review to building you a schedule kind of like this, to walking hand in hand from beginning to end, and test taking skills, stuff like that. So if it has something to do with the MCAT, COMLEX, STEP, even the in-training exams to a certain degree, then we could probably solve it. So be well, be spooky, and everyone have a pleasant evening. Are we not live anymore?